Turns out the series isn't over until it's actually over. For a team that somehow picked up a reputation as frontrunners, the Pacers have been incomparably elite at finding ways to find a way, whether pulling off late-game miracle comebacks or, in the case of Game 6, amassing an unexpected 31-point lead in order to force an all-important Game 7. And yet, in turning up the figurative pressure on the Thunder, the Pacers did so by dialing back their own press, recording their lowest average pickup point of the finals, as they more often waited for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to bring the ball to them before homing in on him in the half court with full-bodied help and a higher frequency of double teams than he's seen during the entirety of the playoffs. Joining me to discuss the mini tweaks that the Pacers made to keep their season alive in Game 6, as well as the quirks of Tyrese Haliburton's game that allowed him to still be effective while limited, is once again my co-host, my favorite basketball writer, my favorite basketball talker, Samson Folk.
The mandate of heaven is back online. Excellent game. I'm here. It took me being at my grandma's house to finally have art behind me, and these were painted by my younger sister for what it's worth. But I mean, what a fun game. Game 7 is where everything's really going to happen, where I do or die. It's been 9 years, Caitlin. Everyone, this series, and it's a classic. Come on. Are you not embarrassed, dude? Like, if you're one of those guys, girls, or whatever, are you not like, oh, wow, I talk about basketball like a jackass, maybe? Yeah. Oh, man, I can't believe it. These games, this series has been unbelievable. For someone who, my rooting interest is definitely Pacers, but I love both these teams. Watching them go head to head, oh my days. What an incredible. And when we eventually, brand our podcast, it has to be called the Front Runner Podcast or something to that effect. Nobody, we're sticking the claim now. If anyone else gets this like slick little idea, don't do it. We will. Okay. Anyway, basketball.
And we have a tremendous clip out there that I reposted this morning, in which from our preview, we were like, start of the podcast, OKC in 5. Middle of the podcast, OKC in 6. Pacers in 7. It could happen. It could still happen. I also want to note very briefly that I find it funny that my sarcastic voice somehow takes on like a southern twang that makes me mispronounce the word conversion, and your sarcastic voice becomes like a Samson baby voice.
Yeah, because the person I'm doing has the brain of a baby. You have a baby brain. Yeah, that's what's going on in your head. Use your adult brain to appreciate the great things around you.
There's a rational explanation for that, not so much a rational explanation for why I take on another region of the country's accent. But other rational explanations of things that occurred. Tyrese Haliburton listed, or was questionable, I guess, in the eyes of some as to whether he was going to play in that Game 6. He decided to play in the Game 6 despite whatever risks there may have been. The Pacers didn't provide detail about what exactly grade level the calf strain that he was dealing with was. He played, by my eye, despite what the internet says, still very limited in Game 6, just as he was also limited in Game 5. Difference being is when you have 2 days off, you as a team get to plan around those limitations and perhaps make some other adjustments that would allow him to be slightly more effective than when you're trying to do that in real time. And the thing that I thought stood out, which we're not going to spend a ton of time on Tyrese here because I honestly thought the other end of the floor was a little bit more interesting, is that I often refer to Tyrese as a basketball counterculture, and many of those counterculture elements of his game allowed him to still be effective and counter for being injured against how Oklahoma City was guarding him. So just really quick, your, broad strokes thoughts on Tyrese and him playing through the injury. I guess you can say whether you thought he was injured or not, because this has become a strange talking point.
Well, I saw people that I like engage with that conversation. I was pretty disappointed because, again, like, this is why I hate when people devalue championships or playoff series based on injuries. It's like injuries are part of it.
Yep.
And both teams, all players sign up to put their bodies on the line to, potentially have bodily harm come to them for this sport, for this goal. And when you constantly undermine that kind of stuff, it undermines all the players there. Not only does it undermine the players who are having to work through injury, but the players who are playing them. And I don't understand why you would want to talk about it that way. And I don't understand Tyrese wasn't actually injured. He was using it as cover. That's such a cynical loser mindset.
It's cynical and obviously doesn't meet the eye test if you've watched him play basketball intently at all.
What is it beyond the pale that Tyrese Haliburton could get 14 points and 5 assists? This means he's never been better. We've not seen a historic triple-double from the man. I don't want to go too long on this, but no, maybe he wasn't as injured as you thought, but the doctors it's not collusion. The doctors aren't on the take. They swore the Hippocratic Oath. Anyway, he's injured. He's playing through it. He had counters he went to. The Pacers were better prepared for what it was going to look like. The Thunder will be better prepared for what it's going to look like in Game 7, defending this version of Tyrese and the pressure points they want to go after. But doing the let me check your body and see what's going on analysis is insane to me. Silly.
I mean, just to point out really quickly, he ran a total of 9 pick and rolls in this game, which granted, he did not need to play in the fourth quarter of that game, which is going to lower his total. But even on a per 100 possession basis, that would have been among the lowest of the season for him. He was getting off the ball incredibly quickly. He wasn't pushing it himself in places where he normally would have, where Siakam, Nemhard, TJ were far more often the bring up ball handler. Things that he was doing is not things that he would normally be doing if he was 100% in his body. That being said, here are some things really quickly that I wanted to run over because he's on the left side of the floor, and as I've pointed out on this podcast many times, Tyrese's preferred shooting motion footwork pattern as a right-handed shooter, when he's going to mid-range and he's pulling up, he attempts shots far more often going to his right, which is a little bit counterintuitive for a right-handed shooter. Also, he prefers stepping back to his right. It just doesn't necessarily come off that way anymore because after he was dealing with another actual injury, his hamstring injury last season that was in his left leg, he couldn't power off that leg as effectively to go to the step back to the right. So he started adding a step back to the left. So now it's more of an even split that you'll see him be able to go in either direction. But last night, because he's more comfortable going to the right, it's actually pretty effective because then he doesn't have to press off of the injured right calf to get back to his left, which is what most right-handed shooters would normally do. He can step back easily to the right and he's comfortable in that motion. Another thing that I'm thinking you will probably remember, because we actually talked about this on your podcast several years ago, is Tyrese is a little bit more comfortable now, but when he first came over with the Pacers in the first 26 games he played, it was not often that you would see him actually drive a big head-on against a switch. It happened very rarely. And when I watched those first 26 games after he was traded to the Pacers, this game in particular stood out to me when they were playing the Sixers. This would have been late in March. He had Joel Embiid on a switch, and he sidestepped to his right, once again reinforcing that he actually does prefer to sidestep and escape dribble to his right on his shot, and got off the ball very quickly. And I thought to myself at the time, and I ended up making a thread on this could be a really inventive way for Tyrese to beat switches with motion.
I wonder if he got Chet last night or something like that.
Yeah, this could be a really inventive way for him to be able to beat switches with motion rather than having to do it off the dribble. So again, if you are limited by a calf injury, it's going to be easier for you to get off the ball and get it back rather than having to try to create an advantage yourself off the dribble or having to rely on your own burst. And slowly but surely over the last couple seasons, you've seen him actually use this move as a counter against switches. So here he is in Brooklyn. Claxton very famously switches out a lot, and he started actually going to this after I'd been that could be a really effective way for him to beat switches. And then last night, same exact thing, faked the righty sidestep, got Chet in the air, and was able to get to the rim. That's how he was effectively getting around things. Yes, this is something that he does, but throughout this playoff run, he's been more capable and willing to do it off the dribble. Last night, not as much. Another thing that I want to add in really quick is a couple people mocked me for this last year when I saw him do it, but I was like, if he could add in a lefty floater, that could be a really effective playoff counter for him because he gets weak to his right or away from his right to his left so often, and there's more incentive to weak him to his left because he is a floater-based player. he operates sometimes now in the mid-range, and when you weak somebody to the left, you're getting an automatic dominant hand contest when he goes to lift up into that floater. So last year, toward the back end of the season, I was like, oh, an offhand lefty floater. That could be a useful playoff counter. And there we go again. So again, you're popping off of the opposite leg. There's clearly things that he's doing differently and things that are different about his game that allowed him to do what he did last night and help the Pacers. I still think we're going to touch on the defensive end much more than what we saw here, but wanted to say, Tyrese's counterculture allowed him to counter for his own injury.
Yes. I mean, the big thing here is like, I think if I was, this is like the inverse of, and they still have to win game 7 if they do, right? But like Tyrese, he's not in line for a dominant finals MVP or anything like that. Like he's not had his big series or anything. And again, I don't know why 14 points and 5 assists has people decrying like it's a fake injury. I don't get any of that. And honestly, I think probably we shouldn't even give it any more time. There was a whole basketball game, and there's breadcrumbs of how game 6 was played that's going to impact game 7. And I'm glad Tyrese was able to be out there. I'm glad Tyrese took, I think what we'll talk about is like a lessened pressure from OKC and used it to his advantage a little bit. And I'm glad that the Pacers lessened their pressure in some areas, ratcheted it up elsewhere, and vexed the stars who have been singular in their dominance in these playoffs in J-Dub and Shea. It's hell yeah. Game 7. And let's talk about game 6.
So for the rest of what I mainly have planned here is I thought there were so many defensive tweaks that I've kind of sectioned them off into various things that I found were improvements both in execution and well as actual adjustments that the coaching staff clearly made in anticipation for this game, some of which we talked about on the prior podcast as possibilities.
We're pretty good at that, I think.
So the first ones are just really quick execution stuff on the defensive end, at least that I noticed. And if you saw other things that you want to throw in here while I run down this, feel free. So this is game 5 in Oklahoma City. We talked about this possession with Nemhard going over the top on the logo and then playing Miles very, very high, and Miles not being particularly successful at providing that edge. In fact, like running away from the edge that he had provided, allowing Shea to get downhill, and Shea had sprayed out for quite a few threes in game 5 in Oklahoma. Same thing here, only Miles actually holds the help and provides some resistance of a wall, forcing Shea to pass out back to the top of the key. And then to point out, the Pacers obviously didn't make an adjustment for Oklahoma City to shoot the 3 as poorly as they did. Like they shot 12%, I think, below their expected effective field goal percentage from 3. That was very helpful. At one point in time, they were 3 of 30 from deep, but you can't affect the location of shots. You can affect who takes shots to a degree. You can affect shot volume, and some of the things that the Pacers did have a direct effect on that. So then, in addition to the high wall, another thing that I noticed that was different, the Thunder have been starting Isaiah Hartenstein, I think, for 2 predominant reasons. Number one, because the Pacers were really extending their pressure, and in order to peel Shea free from Andrew Nembhard's, 90 feet of pressure, they were using their best screener in the starting lineup. And also from his playmaking above the break out of delay actions. Aaron, very quietly, though you and I didn't talk about it in the prior podcast, gave up like 7 or 8 of J-Dub's 40 points just off of basic cutting actions to the rim. The Pacers were just more attentive about this. Like, if you're going to pivot around the pressure, you're going to deny the handoff. They also took away the late pass. That's good from Ben Shepherd. Took away another late pass to Caruso where Tyrese was able to get his hand up off that. That was a lot better than what game 5 was. And then this is actually from a few games ago, where we talked about a way that they were targeting Tyrese, where the bigs were setting down screens leading into a ball screen on Tyrese to make him late in the pick and roll coverage, which is something that you talked to him about at the post-game presser, was making him late up at the top, and then he was coming out very flat at times, which was allowing Shea to split and get downhill. Last night with TJ, when they went to that exact same action, first of all, TJ was a little bit more aware of the screen coming, But he did get clipped by it. But when he got up there, he's actually taking an angle and forcing Shea in a direction so that Nemhard could catch up. And very notably, Nemhard was still pursuing on most of those actions, even if he did get beat on the perimeter. They were very comfortable putting 2 on the ball rather than automatically veer switching. Like, this is a late closeout. This wasn't an intended, I chased over and now I'm veer back switching to the pop. That was, I'm going to go help TJ. They sent a lot more double teaming to Shea in general, but that's something we'll talk about in a little bit. But have you noticed just anything else that you just thought was better execution wise besides
Well,
those 3 basic things that I pointed out?
yeah, and also like Tyrese still got roasted a little bit
Yeah.
in those actions last night too. Like, we're not in the business of doing lowlights, but that's something that OKC will still look to work at. And the Pacers definitely had a better reaction to it. They were able to pen them in a little bit easier in that game. And I think a lot of it, and this is a consideration obviously you talked about, is that I know TJ got a lot of attention last night, but I think the best guard for the Pacers last night was Andrew Nembhard. Like,
By a
17
long
points on
shot. Yeah.
yeah, 17 points on 7 shots is nothing to sneeze at. He and Pascal kind of lifted them out of the mud at the beginning of
Yep.
the game. And you can even see on that play with TJ is like why SGA doesn't come down immediately able to turn the corner and get a step on TJ is because Nemhard is draped all over him. And Nemhard, I don't know what it is about game 6 defense, but this guy, unbelievable. And he's a huge bellwether. He, like, everyone's talking about, like, if the Pacers win, who's the final, because if it's the Thunder, it's Shea. J-Dub had that great game, but I don't think Shea is averaging like 30. It's tough to bridge that gap. But Nemhard when Nemhard has an excellent game, the Pacers they are in against any team ever because of his ability to put clamps on at the front end and to provide secondary creation, sometimes even primary creation, and to hit these, haymaker triples. He was unbelievable last night. And peppered throughout every defensive possession, you see him not only providing pressure, moving players into more unnatural motions, but also when he's off the ball, disrupting things. He is sublime. He's the quiet. He's the rising tide that lifts all boats on defense, which is not usually the case for a guard, but he's doing it. He's a special player.
And I think a lot of the adjustments that the Pacers made were made in part with Tyrese's limitations in mind, but also with Andrew Nembhard in mind. Because a couple things that I would run down there is we looked at the end of game 4, he and Tyrese combined for 5 turnovers, and you and I both thought that several of Nemhard's turnovers were coming from just a sheer place of fatigue and what he was expecting to do. You're asking him to guard a league MVP. He's taking on that assignment almost unilaterally, except obviously when he isn't on the floor. But when he is, he's pretty much guarding Shea. And then if Tyrese is limited at all, he ran more pick and roll last night than Tyrese again. Like, again, just to rehash, Tyrese, 9 picks. Nemhard's playing 27.4 picks per 100 in that game. And so it kind of reminds me, which our audience is predominantly Pacer fans, I'm very certain, but there are some Thunder fans that hop in here and some just general basketball fans. So I will tell them that the Pacers played the Hawks over the back half of the season, and Tyrese was out for that 2-game miniseries. When they were, that meant that Andrew was going to be the starting point guard. He's being guarded by Dyson Daniels, a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and he was also having to guard Trae Young. Mm-hmm. And in the second game, they were like, this is asking too much. We can't have a guy having to completely initiate the offense and be guarding Trae Young. So at the end of the game, they put Benedict Mathurin on Trae instead. It's not because Ben was a better option against Trae. It was in part because Andrew is a better off-ball option, and Trae is tremendous at manipulating taggers, which puts Nemhard in a better position of strength, but also because it just wasn't feasible to expect both of those things. So when you're looking at what the Pacers did headed into this game, which we'll just go ahead and look at all the stuff that Nemhard was doing, is they really dialed back the pickup point for Nemhard a lot, which you and I said maybe that's something that they would need to do with Siakam if he ended up guarding Jalen Williams. Maybe it was something that they needed to do in general, at the bare minimum, going under on more of the picks. And they pretty much, with the pressure in general, were waiting for Shea at half court or the 3-point line. It wasn't the ball goes through the hoop and we're automatically hawking you at the inbound line. So just by the numbers, in games 1 through 5, the Pacers' average pickup point was 56.9 feet. That's a lot of pressure being applied. And game 6, 41.4 feet. That's the lowest of this series and the second lowest of this entire playoff run for the Pacers. So that was a very deliberate tweak just right off the top, where if you're going to need Nemhard to run more offense, a good way to conserve his energy while still allowing him to guard the league MVP was to kind of lop off half the work and tell him, apply all of that energy in the half court rather than doing it the full length of the floor.
Yep. And I reckon when it comes to game 7, that's going to be present once again. Yep. But they're going to have to find their moment when they're like, Andrew, go pick up like really high. Like they're going to have a sequence or a stretch of the game where, because you just can't throw, as we've seen, Shea and J-Dub are really brilliant players. And they weren't as good as we normally see them last night. They could have been saved a little bit by the tertiary players on the Thunder performing better. But Lou Dort, what was he, 0 for 4, started out from 3 in last night's game. That puts him at 50% 3 on like 5 attempts per game in the finals. Like there's a little, but like Chet not being able to provide stuff, the fact that the Pacers overload in accordance to like, we want the ball to go to the Thunder front court. That's what we want. And it worked. That obviously put a lot of pressure. Like there's 2 forms of pressure. The Pacers could go full court pressure and just be like in your ear, like that little annoying mosquito right there. Or they could let you come down. They could apply that pressure. Then they can throw bodies and double teams and put the onus on the likes of the other players. And most successfully, even though Chet had that great bucket on Pascal at the start of the game, when the ball went to Chet, it was like looking for what he can do with it. And Chet has had good response games for sure, more so on defense than offense, but that's a huge linchpin. And you just have to keep, if you want to win game 7, you have to keep funneling the ball to Chet to some degree, but you have to make it look different and toggle it appropriately. But the Pacers, as we said many times, Rick with those levers, it's why I learned like I usually keep the critiques light for Rick because I'm like, well, it'll probably be solved by next game. And lo and behold.
Well, because the thing is, it wasn't even only just about like stealing rest and preserving what the backcourt situation was. It was also they weren't very good at applying the full court pressure in game 5. That's why we looked at what clips we were looking at, because it was just allowing them to get odd man advantages and slalom right to the rim.
Like, slalom is a good point too, just quickly. This is actually, the Pacers defense is really good at absorbing east-west. Really good at absorbing east-west because of the way they help, and especially with Pascal and Nemhard. If things become north-south and you lose it there, the Pacers they don't have Rudy Gobert. They don't have the kind of ultimate stoppers who give you that huge buffer against north-south, like Chet does too. But if you make it east-west, a bunch of in-tune, attentive defenders, they can swarm differently. And J-Dub in particular, in that north-south, was just unbelievable. Slaloming is a really great way to describe it. But it's meaningful. That rather than like the change of angle that, J-Dub got off of his first move, it was like the constant change of direction to outskirt the rotating Pacers. I mean, the peel switches were on point too. They like the rotations were on point. Like Pascal and Nemhard had like 4 times out of the corner they were able to like sniff stuff out, and just really impressive work by the Pacers. Of course, the Thunder will probably have.
And that's why it looks different when you're not going over a pick at 3/4 court and then having Miles having to be up at the level where he's running away from the edge that he's providing. But some actual film of Nemhard and the things that, look different. There he is. He's waiting at half court, which Miles is going to be up higher here, but he's providing more actual resistance and more hand activity at the level of the screen there, even though they were that high up the court. And then when they were switching, they were a lot more willing to give up switches guard to guard, even with TJ getting put onto Shea. The difference being is as soon as TJ was getting put onto Shea, if Nemhard's defender didn't have the ball, or once Nemhard's defender got off the ball, he was basically like, I'm going to go provide a bumper in the pinball machine. Like, I'm all the way off. He doesn't care that his guy is potentially behind a pin and screen in the opposite corner. He's providing another obstacle in the path of Shea. If he did get beat, again, no veer back switching. They're both sticking with the ball, trying to make it a tougher shot. Get over the top. There, what you're talking about, when you can get wider angle drives, more east-west. Pascal was still very active as a guardrail when he wasn't guarding to one or the other of the primary stars, which is something we'll get into after this, so that he could turn Shea back. And then again, you're relying on, the role players for the Thunder to be able to knock down shots, which they didn't do in this particular game.
They asked more of them again.
Yep. And this one, Shea attacks and rejects away from the screen coming from TJ, so there wasn't need to switch, but it's a timely double team from TJ. They were very active on bully drives from Shea to be bringing the double, which if you're not providing as much, full court, itchy sweater pressure against Shea, it was more or less kind of baiting him into some more of the methodical backdowns in the half court against Andrew. And when they did that, like I said, they were doubling right from the top, and their rotations around that were pretty solid, even when the Thunder were trying to cut. And again, it's a missed three, but I think that if you're the Pacers and you're trying to force an all-important Game 7, you're trying to do that with role players missing threes on the road rather than continuing to allow Shea and J-Dub to get into the teeth of the defense. And so, every time you're just going to see it, that they were willing to give up the switches. So Nemhard wasn't having to do as much hedge and recover. And as soon as he got off the ball, he was just constantly providing a shadow presence in the lane, which was creating some awkward passing avenues for Shea as well. And then they even did that with Jalen Williams as well. I mean, you can see Nemhard coming out actually off of Shea in this instance too, just providing some swarming help. So in some ways, it was almost like they took a page from the Thunder in this game, because this was the highest rate of double teams on Shea's touches that he's seen in the entirety of the playoffs. 33% here. I believe it was in the low 20s over the first 5 games for the Pacers. So he hasn't seen that type of swarming help to this point against any of the opponents that he had prior seen.
It's that clarity of intention that helps too, because you'll see, it happens in every game all the time. Players break scheme when they're like, there's a read here, I'll help. But if you and that's what the Thunder are so great at. The Thunder are like, no, just help. And we're very ready to help, and we're very ready to recover. And so everybody's go, 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 go. But the Pacers, if they're trying to, which they've been good at in the playoffs and have had success against Shea in a couple games, but when you're trying to we're going to stay home, we're going to funnel, sometimes you get stuck in that position where it's like a guy helps and then the ball goes out and then it's wide open. But even when in this game, they were more dedicated to help, the threes didn't look as open as they did in other games. It's that clarity of intention and knowing what you want to do. Also, what'd you say? Itchy sweater pressure. You and I, the through line of this podcast series is the dueling metaphors and analogies. And itchy sweater pressure is definitely better than the mosquito one I made. So, tip of the cap over there.
I don't know. Both are quite irritating. Are you the type of person who gets bit by mosquitoes a lot, or are you a lucky person who they don't like you that much?
I get bit for sure. Yeah. That was the best thing about, I'm back in Saskatchewan right now, just quickly. Mm-hmm. Saskatchewan has very dense forests. In the summer, there's a lot of mosquitoes here. And I remember when I went to an ID camp, and I just assumed, because when it was hot in Saskatchewan, there were mosquitoes. So I was like, that must be the case everywhere. And when I went to an ID camp at Gonzaga, and it was warm and everything was, and there weren't mosquitoes, I was like, what the hell? And then when I was living in Mexico, there was less mosquitoes there than there was in a Saskatchewan summer. And I was like, so is Saskatchewan just bad? It's minus 50. And then there's a lot of mosquitoes in the hot summer. I was like, this is the worst. I can't believe it. So that's my little tirade.
No, I'm very unfortunate in that regard too, because I was fortunate in this particular regard because I had a friend, one of my best friends throughout all of junior high, high school, and after high school. Her parents had an in-ground pool, but she lived out in the country, but we would go over there all the time, and we were night swimming one night, and she had a bench at the back end of that pool, so you could just sit on the bench, and we were just sitting there talking. We got out of the pool, and I had 18 mosquito bites. She had 20.
Did you have, some people would take your nail and you do the cross on it?
Yeah.
What was your counter?
I don't think we had anything, because I didn't want to get scars from the mosquito bites, but
I probably
bad.
have
the third person who was with us had none, but we were sitting in the same exact vicinity. Like, there was something about me and my close friend who owned the pool that they liked us more than the other person. I don't know what it was, but
So there's a show that's very popular from Saskatchewan. It's very popular around the world. It's called Corner Gas. It's like Saskatchewan slice of life. And there's an episode where one of the guys, Hank, never gets bitten by mosquitoes, and they learn that it's because he showers with dish soap, like citron dish soap. It is very funny. Anyway, basketball.
Another defensive change where I don't have a metaphor or analogy that will sidetrack us, but another thing we talked about after Game 5 is the possibility of Pascal Siakam guarding Jalen Williams. They did not start out with Pascal Siakam guarding Jalen Williams. It seemed to me that they were going to see how Aaron Nesmith fared. And after about 3.5 minutes into that basketball game, they called a timeout after Aaron Nesmith had got beat on a dunk where Andrew's help was actually slightly late, rotating over as the low man. And lo and behold, Pascal Siakam was guarding Jalen Williams. So it wasn't a huge chunk of the game, but he had 13 half-court possessions against him. The prior 5 games combined, he only had 12. And I think that was another meaningful thing, just like, dialing back the pressure and allowing Andrew to perhaps conserve energy offensively, but also expend more energy in the half court with what they were doing, is that Pascal even just taking that little chunk of those possessions against Jalen Williams gave Aaron Nesmith help in a way that he needed to. And when you're talking about, I liked what you mentioned there about them wanting the ball to go to the front court. If Aaron Nesmith's on Chet Holmgren, there's an incentive for the Thunder to be like, get the ball to Chet Holmgren. That's probably an advantage. And if I'm the Pacers, I'm like, it's one less shot for Jalen Williams and Shea. Sure.
And it's also like, it's not created by them either. Like, that's the huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
And if Chet could swing like a game 7 like crazy, like the Thunder could win by 20 if Chet balls the hell out. He's such a linchpin of how the Pacers want to help off, and so many possessions funnel to him as a result. And if he just had and we saw it, game 2, I believe, was when it kind of was like, oh, he's hitting shots at the start, he's driving the closeout and making good decisions. And it's been an absolute he and Miles have just been like, let's miss shots together, brother. Let's see what we can combine for.
It was quite the battle, to the point where when Miles was still playing in garbage time, I'm like, are they literally just hoping that he's going to find some degree of rhythm right now? Because why is this a thing that's still happening?
Like a 7 of 11 performance in game 7 would do wonders for Miles Turner. I just love to see it, because he's the pacer. He's like at the start when they're he's like, Pacer, like Indy. He's the guy. He's been here for so long, and he's going out there every single day, and he's like, damn, I can't get a bucket.
You know what I think I appreciated most about that sentiment is that you very easily could have said he's been there for forever. But now you feel part of it because you just said he's been here for forever.
Oh, geez. It's those middle America, middle Canada sentimentalities.
So Pascal against Jalen Williams, showing the effects of this very quickly. This is the possession where Aaron ended up getting beat on the baseline drive against Jalen Williams. Andrew's a little bit late on the screen rejection there with the help. Rick calls a timeout. Out of the timeout, at first I was like, is this a thing? Or are they just slightly cross-matched? Because obviously they weren't intentionally putting Tyrese onto Chet Holmgren. So I was like, I might need to wait and see how this looks, which this is a really standout possession from Andrew Nembhard, which we could have shown, because being able to hold him off and apply pressure while swiping with your offhand without reaching is really, really impressive. But then I was like, nope, this is legitimately a thing, because now Pascal is matched up with Jalen Williams at the wing. And then they tried to get Chet, like I said, on that little curl cut against Aaron, and he did score on it. But the Pacers didn't really seem fazed by that because they kept up with the matchups that they had. And at this point, the Thunder are like, okay, now we really realize that Aaron's guarding Chet, so we're going to go into a big-to-big pin down. The Pacers switched it. Miles is now back on to Chet.
Look at Nemhard here. Pascal provides a ton of length. There's a lot of effort there. But who is immediately a goalie in the lane? Just let it run. It's Andrew Nembhard.
And to Pascal's credit, he actually did get over the top of the screen, which was one of my concerns when we talked about this in the last one. I was like, they've been tilting a lot of the offense and ball handling responsibilities to Jalen Williams, like how much do you want Pascal doing that? Well, as it turns out, like they weren't picking up as high. So that was one thing that conserved it. And then to Pascal's credit, he actually was getting like right here, he actually gets skinny and gets over the top and gets back in front better than what you would have been seeing at the back end of last season. And then it is more like effectively self-creation from Chet Holmgren, and he ends up dragging his pivot foot there. So like those results, I think that you're probably pretty happy with. Would it be different if the Thunder know, like, hey, if the Pacers came out right away in Game 7 and were like, let's just put Pascal directly on to Jalen Williams, I would guess that the approach might be slightly different than when they're having to react to it in real time. And to be honest, I don't think that the Pacers would probably just outright put him on there either, because I don't think that they want Pascal having to have that degree of a workload for an entire basketball game. But being able to do it for this many extra possessions, there you're going to see the bully drive, the automatic double from the top, Pascal rotating around. In this case, I think that they really would have rather that Miles ran to the dunker spot and kicked Aaron out to Jalen Williams, so that you're not giving up, the easy penetration there. But Aaron did try to take a charge, although he got called for the block instead. There, Pascal actually went under. He ended up fouling, but it was like a rare sighting of an under. And then this was just the last one that I wanted to point out in the Pascal guarding Jalen Williams montage here, because they don't even think about switching it. They keep Pascal's length on to Jalen Williams. And then you're just seeing more excellence between Pascal and Nemhard and where they were getting guys to get shot attempts from. And then that's just a repeat because Pascal was still guarding Jalen Williams when they went into that double, and then the rotations work out. So that was a very tiny thing. I don't know how much attention that would have really grabbed. I noticed it because it was something that you and I talked about at length. Like, is this a thing that they will actually attempt to do? And obviously, like,
I'll just say, like, this is what we talked about prior, was that Pascal, and this is kind of like Pascal being the veteran that he is, being the, he's won an NBA Finals. He's been part of very deep playoff runs, quite a few over his career now. There is, and you can see it during the season, even as the Pacers ask a lot of him, he manages his own minutes in a way. Like Pascal has dealt with like serious injuries, lingering injuries. He is like a legendary worker. His stamina is obviously elite, but he's clearly managed his body so that he can ratchet up at the end of the season. And his defense in the Eastern Conference Finals plus the finals has been unbelievable. And so many of the Pacers are just like, whew, like take a breath, see where we're at. And Pascal, even when the shots don't go down exactly as he needs them. By the way, he's shooting like 83% from the line in this series, which is a nice change of pace. Just, it's that Pascal has provided a floor of defense that radically alters what the Pacers need. His versatility has been able to kind of put other teams in check, and he pushes out early in transition. He's opportunistic, and in game 3, he goes and scores the first 6 points of the game. In game 5, like he tried to bring them back into it before everything blew up. He's been like that skeleton key aspect has been so impressive, and it just makes sense that J-Dub has been running loose. And you look at this team that's asked so much of Pascal, and you say, give us one more versatility thing and have it be effective. And it worked. He's just been incredible.
And there has to be a balance too, because the other thing that we brought up is that, like, if he was guarding Jalen Williams more than what he did in this game, then you're losing him as the low man and the communicator and the help defender that he's been so excellent at being. But I did find the number. So Jalen Williams has put up 33.9 player points per 100 matchups on the 168 matchups against Nesmith, because it's pretty much been almost exclusively Nesmith guarding him, compared to 20 on now the 25 that he's been up against Siakam, which 13 of those came just in game 6. So it's not going to look like a massive shift there. That's obviously a small sample size, but the fact that Aaron didn't have to do it, the fact that it shifted a few touches to Chet Holmgren, and like, I guess I didn't really point out, after halftime, the Thunder didn't start Hartenstein again. They started Caruso instead, which, I mean, makes sense, because if you're going to be better at covering the cuts, if you're not applying as much half court or full court pressure where, the really important screen craft was necessary, I was never really super big on what advantages the Thunder were gaining by playing double big anyways. Yeah. So they ended up going with Caruso. So that would be something to watch at the start of game 7 as well, in terms of what lineup they're going to put out there, because they clearly didn't think it was going to be an advantage in the second half of this game.
I also think Caruso's been the third best player on there, and I think quite comfortably. there's been like a little bit of self-creation that's popped off. He's obviously shot the ball really well. His defense and ball pressure, which wasn't great last night, even as they started him, I was like, okay, they want to ratchet it up, and then the doors came off, right? Like, he has the ability, if they go to him like earlier in game 7, like he can change some of this stuff. But and also as like a quick thing, a final note on the Pascal Siakam J-Dub thing is it's better as a change up.
Yep.
Because like not only from the stamina perspective of Pascal, but also you look at it as like, well, if you actually put him on J-Dub from the outset, the Thunder are going to have watched the film. They saw it for an extended stretch. They're going to be like, okay, more screens. Let's test this. Let's see what this looks like, rather than being like, let's give Chet a shot and let's see where it goes. There'll be more intention. So it's not a solve. It's a counter, but it's not a solve.
So some other miscellaneous things really quick here is, everything that we talked about with Andrew defensively. The Pacers went back to the snug pick and roll with TJ again. That was a pet action in game 5 that they got traction with. And this one, they were more aggressive coming over at the nail against TJ so that he couldn't turn into the paint as heavily. Andrew shot the ball well in this game. When TJ gets back off of it against the switch from Hartenstein off of the sag. So, it was kind of like we talked about in game 5 that the Thunder weren't really running anything super challenging at times against the Pacers. It was more or less just space, SGA and Jalen Williams at the top, and just be like, wait for too many people to commit to one of the drivers, and then somebody else would either be attacking the closeout or making a shot. That was kind of what that was. And like what you said at the top, like Andrew making those back-to-back threes, especially the one that was incredibly difficult where he was stepping back uphill to his left, and then also making, I think, the layup, and then Pascal, what they did, like that saved what could have been a very, very disastrous start for the Pacers.
And then like, man, and Nemhard and TJ and Pascal in that game, and Toppin as it went on, like Toppin coming in and banging triples, but TJ being, never giving up the dribble is just such a fun thing. It's just like, it's the perfect counter to how the Thunder want to play. But Andrew, like even that 3 he made when it was an 18-point lead, it had evaporated from 30, 28 down to 18. Like that's a third of it gone. And we know if this game gets to like 15 points, that's like a 4-point lead. It just evaporates in such a hurry. And Nemhard, game 6 Nemhard, I don't know what it is, Nemhel, everything that comes along with it, but he was like perfect. It's the numbers aren't huge, but I don't know what more you could want from Nemhard. Like in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, he averaged like 21 and 6 or something, and he was great. But last night was like perfect. And it's just, it speaks to my friend who you had to unfollow because he's such a funny, goofy tweeter. But he had this great tweet where he was like, the number one option discourse has been like so gutted because the Pacers were just like, let's just stack guys who can do things, a bunch of different things, and play the right way and see where it goes. And you're seeing it. It's like Nemhard can give you this. Nesmith has given you that. Pascal does a million things. Tyrese can do this. It's just, this team, I see people talk about it. The Thunder are one of my favorite teams I've ever watched. The Pacers are one of my favorite teams I've ever watched. And I see people echo similar sentiments. This team is really cool. They're the first team to have 8 different players score over 200 points in a postseason. They do it differently.
Slowly but surely they had to win you over because their play style was not always your favorite. It was not.
Well, they got better at it, Like they got better at it. And then I was like, okay, fine.
Also, I wanted the record to show I do not have like weird social media habits. I followed your friend because you were like, follow my friend. This is gonna be funny. And then when I did it, you were like, oh, it was so funny when you followed him. And he was like, he didn't want me following him.
Yeah,
as I recall. So I was like, I'll unfollow him then.
No, because he listens to every podcast. He doesn't care about me. We're friends. He's not supposed to look up to me at all. He's like, but he really, like, your analysis is really great and he really likes it. So, and he likes how you view the game. So if you follow him, then he's like, oh, now I can't tweet like a jackass anymore. But that lasted like 2 days for him. And then obviously he probably tweeted something insane. And then you're like, okay, let's unfollow. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I won't say his name, but like he listens to the podcast. He'll probably laugh at this point. But he's great. He knows basketball really well. Yep. Good guy.
You're always tipping off the other little miscellaneous things that I have because you said something about Obi. And to say how bad my analysis was on the last podcast, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, if the Pacers don't dial back some of what they're doing with the overs, they might have to like try playing quote unquote a little bit of zone. The Pacers didn't play any zone in this game, but the Thunder in the third quarter were like, let's try to do something to alter the complexion of this basketball game. So they went into the zone and they went to their flare play between Tyrese and Obi that's triggered by the top pass. And Obi slipped into space against that, and then he relocated on the dribble penetration from TJ. And after Obi had made this three, I think that they played like one or two more possessions of zone, and that was the end of that. So we didn't see much zone in this basketball game, and not from the team I thought that we might, but definitely from the Thunder, and it didn't last long. In part, thank you to Obi Toppin for that.
I'm really glad we didn't see the Pacers in zone because that means it's still in play for Game 7. Like they can get the armpit sweat, they can get the Vaseline, put it on the baseball, and they can throw as much junk as they can muster in Game 7. Like if you lose the rope a little bit and like, man, because after Game 1, you know, we talked about like, oh, this perfect next rotation, and the Thunder start layering in cuts. Like Mark and Rick have done a wonderful job of like punch counter punch in this series. The Thunder are going to have not something, but a lot of things for the Pacers in Game 7. And having that little zone in the back pocket to be like, I hope it works, is not such a bad thing. It's about knowing when to put it out there because the Thunder obviously, like TJ just drives it, collapses, and Obi does a great job. And it's like, well, damn, that looks stupid as hell. But zone, there's a wide swing with zone. We saw the Cavs steal a game because they're like, you guys can't do anything. And the Pacers like, we will destroy this every time down. It's things change quickly in the NBA, and maybe no quicker than in the finals where two genius coaches are like bashing their head against the wall looking for genius inspiration. But having zone to still throw against this Thunder team, I like that they still have it.
And that's an interesting talking point in and of itself because we have seen the Pacers take polar opposite approaches against Shea from the start of this series to the end of this series. And they've needed to in order to extend it. And I think, and I don't want this to be a direct quote, but I think that somebody did ask Mark, like, is there a point in time where you don't have any more adjustments to make? And he was basically like, no.
Yeah.
And I think that there are times in the past where I've watched Pacer teams in the playoffs. I mean, I said it when the Pacers played the Heat in the bubble. I was like, they don't have any more levers left to pull. Like and in part because they weren't prepared to pull those levers because they didn't try a lot of things during the regular season. So yes, they could have tried them. Would they have been effective at them? It's kind of like what we just watched from the New York Knicks. They tried things. They weren't very good at it because they had no experience and they didn't really have the personnel to try it. I think these two teams could be pulling levers for a very long time.
Yes. Well, they're both two-way teams. Like, and that is the really great thing about these Pacers. It's also why it's imperative that the Pacers win Game 7. Because the level of defense that the Thunder play, it's easy to see the Thunder do this for like 2 or 3 more years. This Pacers defense, they got to the point they need to get to. They've been there. But it would be really difficult for this team to like maintain this for years, to be like this type of defense for this long. Like they'll have to be inventive going forward. And they've been incredible to watch because of that, like meeting the moment aspect of the team. And most people think meeting the moment is like an offensive thing. And the Pacers have been so counterculture. And the conversation around this team, and it's not even like borderline condescension, but the open condescension towards the Pacers throughout the last 2 years of their basketball as like they don't deserve a thing. Why are they here preparing for the finals? Everyone's like, well, they're going to get destroyed. And then when they win, it's like, well, the Thunder let this happen. It's like, no, the Pacers apply things. The Pacers change tone. The Pacers change pace. The Pacers are the motivator of so much of what happens. And you, after watching this finals run, and who knows what next year is, but how could you walk away from this series, Game 7, they win or lose at any point in time, looking at the Thunder or the Pacers and not being like, these are very clearly the two best teams in the NBA. Like, very clearly. They absolutely dominated their respective conferences. They're slugging it out, and it's because they're so varied and skilled and tenacious. And the Thunder were always that, but the Pacers found their way to it by getting more resiliency out of their offense in some respects, but also their defensive prep, their defensive tenacity, their defensive attention to detail has just gone way up. Cool teams.
Everyone wanted us to be doing more predictions than what we did. I will let people know that when we did a mailbag, people asked us about playoff matchups, and both of us felt pretty good about the road that was in front of the Pacers between, Milwaukee/Detroit and then being on Cleveland's side of the bracket. And then potentially at the time, I'll admit I didn't see the Knicks advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals. I thought it would be Boston. And now in retrospect, and obviously we can't know, this is hypothetical, but after watching them play the Thunder, I feel much better about how they would have handled playing the Celtics than what I thought back 2 months ago. I mean, the only holdover there is that this series, like the Celtics series, has been a challenge for Miles, in part because of the cross-matching and the switching and the types of defenders that are capable of cross-matching and switching. Yep. That's created similar issues for him that we saw in that series last year. But other than that, like I can't think of many teams other than the Thunder who are tailor-made to create problems for the Pacers that they wouldn't have beat in a 7-game series. And I think they should feel similarly headed into next year, regardless of what happens in a Game 7, maintaining that everybody has health on this roster. Because there's still some people on this roster that I think still have room to get better, that they could be adding in.
I'm excited.
Very quietly, Johnny Furphy can play. Very quietly. People have not seen a lot of him. He can play, especially in this scheme. Like he'll be interesting depending upon what happens with the rest of their rotation. But
also, yeah. And like guys have to cart his way ahead of the horse here. Guys have to get paid on this Pacers team. They have to look, they have to be inventive. I mean, they made a trade during the finals, so they're thinking still. They can, it's not like Rick pulling the levers here and being like, I actually like this. Like there's mind and brain is on the game, but yeah, Jarris is probably who I'm most excited for next year. That like he needs health, but some flashes I saw during this playoff run, I was like, especially like, yeah. And Obi is not exactly a perfect facsimile of Jarris at all, but you definitely see Obi do stuff, and you're like, Jarris can do that, and yeah, I'm excited for it.
And the thing is that, Jarris showed enough as a shooter too, that like the thought process was that Pascal and Obi had blocked him from playing. But in reality, if he had been ready to play this year, there was pathways to Jarris to play, and there'll be pathways to Jarris to play next year if they continue to see growth and development from him. And the same thing with Johnny Furphy. If they see stuff from him over Summer League, they want to play 10 or 11 guys deep. It was more so a choice a lot of times between Ben Shepherd and Jarris than it was between Jarris and Obi or Jarris and Pascal. Yeah. So
if Jarris is really good, he and Pascal will fit together extremely well. Like that's not everyone thinks about blocking players. This happened in Toronto. Everyone's like Pascal and Scotty. Like Pascal's disrupting Scotty. It's like Pascal elevated Scotty immeasurably. He was so much better next to Pascal. Not just because of like how it affected matchups, but how he positively affected. And everyone was just like looking at 3-point percentage. Like good players elevate other good players. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it was somewhat similar. I mean, Obi was blocked in New York because of Julius Randle, but the system in New York was also blocking Obi in a way that the system in Indiana is not. And he's building out those strengths. So somewhat of a cross comparison. But the last thing that I will bring up, since this was almost an entire fourth quarter of garbage time, what did you find to be the most amusing thing in the fourth quarter? I think for me, it was when there was 5 minutes left and the Pacers were just playing a lineup without a point guard. Like Ben Shepherd was just running point and Johnny Furphy was just bringing the ball up.
Yeah.
In an NBA Finals game.
Well, you know how you introduced me because I was young at the time and I wasn't tied in culturally to Malice at the Palace. But when they showed Meta World Peace and he got booed, that's when I was like, oh, you know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, this makes sense because I started watching basketball a lot in like 2007, 2008. And then obviously just so much for the rest of my life. But Mouse at the Palace was more so like a Sports Center top 10 crazy clip I saw. And I never saw a cultural backlash. I never saw how it affected, Indiana, the team, all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was like so interesting. But then for them to cheer brazenly for James Johnson as he gets ejected, I was like, this is an interesting like contrast. I thought that was because honestly the basketball I've watched a lot of garbage time with the Raptors. I've seen enough. I wasn't like super like locked into Pacers garbage time, so I was paying attention to the other machinations, I suppose. I just wanted everyone to be healthy, and everybody was.
An interesting contrast, because when the Pacers played the Raptors in the playoffs, when Paul George had one of his greatest playoff series ever, there was a lot of Raptors fans at then Bankers Life Fieldhouse. And now you can see the turnaround in how the fan base has embraced this particular Pacer team, even though the number one Raptors fan has been at a lot of these games to come and watch Pascal.
Oh, yeah. That is like Raptors fans, they're very strong fans. And like Pascal, as much as the conversation was around him, has left an indelible mark on Toronto. Like Toronto loves that guy. And he's one of those rare players. It doesn't often happen, but who was a true max player. And I think we can say he's a max player now. A true max player who wanted to stay somewhere and the team traded him away. And when that happens, fan bases typically cling on because they're like, oh, that guy. He has a special place in Toronto for sure.
Well, that's the end of my thoughts from Game 6. I wanted to really summarize and show, hey, these were adjustments that the Pacers made. This is ways that they played better. This is ways that Tyrese pushed through this injury. Hopefully that's what people could take away from it. Really, really impressive performances, in particular from Andrew Nembhard and Pascal Siakam, which is kind of what I think most people likely anticipated, knowing what the circumstances were going to be, that those two are really going to have near perfect games, and they kind of did. So looking forward to Game 7, obviously. Anytime you can play the very last day of the season, that's a pretty special thing that a basketball team gets to do on the brink of a potential championship. My mind is wandering to parades again, Samson. I'm setting myself up for disappointment, potentially, but maybe not, because we do still have the clip that I will be able to share tons of times of us being like, Pacers in 7, it could happen. It still could happen.
So I'm being confronted with my own willingness to accept things from people, because I was like, oh man, so I need a benefactor to fly me. And people like messaged me, people have offered things. And same when I was like, I want a yes sirs like Game 6 shirt. And people were like, I'll mail it to you. And I was like, oh man, I feel awkward now.
People in Indiana being pretty nice there. I mean, you also are on the brink of potentially getting a new tattoo. Are you prepared for this?
That's true. Oh yeah. Oh, that was our conversation, but yeah. Podcast audience. Yeah. I've promised that if the Pacers win, I'll get a tattoo. And the agrarian economy of buckets, I believe, is what the tattoo would be. So that would be a fine tattoo to have. Like this tattoo this is from the Bouncing Around podcast, the fish with the gun, the great way of kicking out behind it, and kind of go. And yeah, I'm ready to get tatted up. I've got several tattoos. So an agrarian economy. It is a bit like when I explain to my family, especially the tuna holding the gun, they're like, what's this? It was my first tattoo. I was like, it's from a podcast I do. And they're like, what the hell is wrong with you? And then I got this rum ham from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Blake Murphy, my mortal enemy, of course, has a matching one. So all my tattoos are silly. So an agrarian economy of buckets would maybe be my most serious. I'll be honest with you. Nobody cares about this. I have tattoos. I'll get an agrarian economy of buckets tattoo if they win. I just have to know where to put it. Where would I put an agrarian economy of buckets tattoo?
If I was getting it, I'd probably get it on the back of my calf. Or down by my ankle.
I'll probably put
Feels
it.
right.
I'll probably put it on my upper thigh. Actually, I'll put it above my other thigh tattoo. That's probably where I put it. It's for if I start wearing 5-inch shorts like Blake Murphy does in the summer. He's
After you've told me to stop talking about the tattoo, we've now added in tattoo location.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, do you have anything else that you want to add or ask me or say or bring up from private conversations that maybe we're not supposed to bring up on podcasts?
Nope. I'm off to the Saskatoon Zoo.
We didn't go to the zoo when you were here. I had plans, but it was Zubilation, and it was also very hot. So
Well,
it didn't get to happen.
I tell
Made
you
me
what should
sad.
happen. If the Pacers, whether they win Game 7 or lose it, that's a historic thing at Game 7 in the finals. There should be more fanfare for the Pacers heading into next year than maybe they've ever had. There should be more media attention. There should be the most popular podcast should be approached for opportunities to have a wider base of attention on the podcast. And that should feature both of its co-hosts. And that should mean that I should have other opportunities to go down to Indianapolis. Maybe we'll go to the zoo.
I thought maybe you were going to be like, the zoo is going to sponsor the podcast.
The zoo should sponsor the podcast.
Let's do that.
That's now my two dreams is pull up. Myself and Trey have been waiting for Mountain Dew. We got Axe. Like we had the Axe sponsorship.
That's not tiny. That's
it was
legit
not
branding there.
Yeah, it was not tiny. We had the Axe sponsorship, and I was like, Axe is pretty close to Mountain Dew. I feel like we're pretty close to a Mountain Dew sponsorship, which we both want desperately. And maybe we need to stop talking about what we've been saying, like Mountain Dew is incredible. We don't drink it that much, but we love it when we do. And
except for when you refer to it as battery acid at media.
Caitlin, you're going to blow this whole thing for me. Okay, well, one, it did taste like battery acid. I don't know what they did at the media thing, okay? Anyway, but Mountain Dew rocks. Mountain Dew, hello. I swear by your product.
I have a really good Mountain Dew story to tell you, but I'm not going to tell it right now, but you're going to like it. I'm not going to tell it right now, though.
So I want Pull Up Tray sponsored by Mountain Dew, and I want our podcast, the Front Runner podcast, to be sponsored by all the zoos. When we go on location somewhere, that zoo will sponsor our trip out there. Will pay for us to go out there. We'll do a vlog at the zoo.
Yep.
And then that's what we need. Also, since you're not going to tell the Mountain Dew thing, Princess Bride, I know you saw everybody talking about it.
There was lots of people tagging me on Twitter in tweets about this movie.
It's so good.
I need to look up and see if it's on one of the streaming things that I have subscriptions for. If it is, when this is over, I will give it a watch. But if it's not, I'm not going to go searching for it beyond that.
My favorite line maybe ever. It's so good. He says, "You're really that smart." He says, "Let me put it this way. You ever heard of Plato, Aristotle, Socrates?" And he goes, "Yes." And he says, "Morons." As if calling those guys dumb means he's really intelligent. It's so good. Everything is so good. Andre the Giant is in there. Oh my God. Caitlin, this is like one of the pinnacles of cinema. Princess Bride. It is a true accomplishment. It's imperative that you watch this.
My sister has seen it. She actually debated with me and claimed that I had seen it. I don't think that this is correct. But she says that, I mean, she really, really likes it. She said it's one of her favorite movies. She claims that we've watched it. And I'm like, I have never watched this movie, sister. I don't know what you're talking about, but you watched it with somebody else who wasn't me. But like I said, I will watch it if it's on one of the streaming services that I already have a subscription for. If I don't, then I'll have to wait until it comes back onto the subscription service.
There's an episode, you probably didn't read it, of Minute Basketball, because Lewis and I wrote about basketball from the perspective of the 2008 housing crisis too big to fail. We wrote about it from a lot of different perspectives. It's a metaphorical exploration of basketball. God, it was cool that we did that. One of the episodes we did was Princess Bride. And I think probably my favorite one was Drive, the movie with Ryan Gosling. We did an episode where I wrote about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being one of the greatest drivers of all time and played it into Drive. But the Princess Bride one is so good. It's so much fun.
Am I going to spoil it for myself if I go looking for this and read it and I haven't seen the movie?
You read it after. And if you try and skip the line, I will be irate with you. Absolutely livid.
Over the summer, I will try to find it, the movie, and then
You're not doing any draft work. You go there immediately after the series is done. I'm not as gracious as you are.
You're because like when I recommend things, you kind of act like you're going to do them and then you don't.
Exactly.
I'm making a commitment on podcast.
Yes, you're more gracious.
You have Grim Fandango to play and books to read.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're more gracious. Like, you've allowed me the space. I'm not gracious. I'm hounding you. Like, no, you watch this now. I'm the boss. You know what I mean?
I will have some time on my hands eventually. I'm hoping. Yeah.
Can I get a prediction from you for Game 7?
No.
I'm going to say here, Pacers in 7.
It is always better to err on the side of optimism. It generally is. Like, nobody's ever going to come at you for being too optimistic about the team that you cover.
Exactly. There's no.
That being said, I really did believe the Pacers were going to beat the Knicks in 6. I really did believe that when I said it, but I also was like, I'd rather err on the side of being too optimistic about this team than too pessimistic. Hence why I said.
Yeah, there's especially as like a regional, like if you cover the team, like what are people gonna be like? You dumbass! Oh, you thought they were gonna win, idiot! Like nobody. There's no downside to it. But I do believe they win Game 7. I said this on Andrew's podcast. We said it here. There you go. Bob's your uncle. Becky's your.
Are you gonna pop open a bottle of Mountain Dew when they do?
I'm gonna have a Mountain Dew shower. Yep.
Okay. Well, you have a zoo to get to and people to meet, so go ahead.
That's right.
Tell me to have a blessed day, and
yes,
that way I can feel like I will have a blessed day.
Exactly. These are important sign-offs. So, listeners, this is like the banter we were doing in rounds like 1 and 2. It was a return to form a little bit. Thank you for tuning in. This is, as I've said many times, unparalleled coverage of the finals and the Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder to some degree as well. If you liked what you saw here, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. It supports us. It helps spread this out to more people. And if you want to support us more tangibly, you can subscribe over at the Basketball She Wrote Patreon. It is what allowed me to come to Indianapolis and cover 2 finals games. It is what allowed me to write a piece for every single game, save for the Star Wars stolen piece in Milwaukee. And it has allowed Caitlin and I to dive as deep as possible into every single game and uncover things that just would have been left on the drawing room table in coverage if we hadn't done it. And thank you to the people who do subscribe. Please consider doing so if you have the means. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day from Caitlin and I, and goodbye.